So it's cool because there's like a little chat function that's in OBS for
Yeah.
like direct to YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I could do that. Let's see. Open up another window. Actually, I'll just use my phone. It's easier.
Oh, and we're apparently live.
Okay.
Yeah, you look bored.
I'm trying to find the live feed from you.
Oh,
And there we
oh,
go. Live.
oh, yeah, yeah. So if you do youtube.com/ Yadma, that should take you direct to my channel as well.
Yeah.
YADMAH.
There's a little delay, but I'm on there. And I do look bored and looking down on my screen because my phone is down here. But
Right,
we're
right.
going to move up here.
It is what it is, right? I mean, right now, if I'm looking at my screen, like if I'm looking at your, well, technically, if I'm looking at your window, you're over there, right? But if I'm looking at my center screen, it because my camera's down here, so it looks like I'm not looking at you at all, which is a little bit weird. So maybe I'll just try to talk to the camera. Okay, so I think let's see, how do we share? Let's share to Facebook.
Are you sharing to the groups?
It's gonna be shared to just my Facebook wall. If you're into RC Drift, join John and I.
All right. I'll wait until after you share and then I'll share it to my people. My two people.
You're two people. Hey, two people's more than none. Hey, test is working. Busted Nux. How's it going? Okay, so that did it get posted to Facebook?
Yes. And I'm sharing it to Messenger right now.
To our groups?
Yes.
Do you, if you're looking at the background, do you see it's basically my logo? It's just
Yes.
really, really
It's
big.
cool. I like that. Albany Track Chat. Okay. So I've sent it enough. We'll see if we get responses from this
Right?
people.
Hopefully the stream looks okay. And
It
hopefully
looks
the
good from our end.
we are good. Where are you about, Busted Nux? Am I saying that right? I think I'm saying that right. Okay, so do I
I'm
get
just
to
closing
see
windows, guys.
what?
Oh, I was just saying I'm closing windows because I'm using one screen for everything, so it shows me who's messaging back. And Alex said he'll join us later.
Ah, you should level up, John. Get more than one monitor.
When we build that new PC for me, then yeah, maybe.
I mean, if you give me like 2 grand, I'll build you a killer computer.
Yeah, someday.
Or, or if you just wait, you can just listen for Lance and be like Dibs, like the Dib Master Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, or
yeah.
I could just give Lance a shopping list and be like, "Hey, this is what I need."
I mean, maybe.
Be like, "Hey, bud, we need this."
Jake's at the zoo, like Portland Zoo.
Yeah, he's at the Oregon Zoo. I just saw their post earlier, or Ray's post.
Gotcha. Oh,
Hey,
it's
watching
Janae.
Janae's.
Hey. Dude, if he's still at the zoo right now, it's 33 degrees down here. It's got to be cold up there.
It's pretty cold. That's why I went and grabbed a hoodie.
Right? Oh, okay. So it's going to get pretty warm in my office here. But anyway.
Hmm.
Okay. So we're going to start things off. This is going to be our first live stream. So for those of you that are watching right now, welcome. Um, really, this is going to be kind of like I wouldn't say just drift specific things, but it's going to be mainly RC related, right? We might go into a little bit about like everyday hobbies, maybe snowboarding. Um, Someone went to Timberline. Someone went to Timberline the other day. He's in one of the Minimoto groups. But yeah, I forget. Oh, it was you rode with him for quite a while.
Judson?
Yeah. It's Judson. He posted a
Yep.
picture of his new snowboard the other day.
Hmm.
Oh look, we got Paul. Paul Skez. Cody's little brother.
Okay, cool.
Too bad he doesn't have a RC drift car yet. But apparently he's building his own. I think he's doing his own like real dirt oval car. So that'll be cool for him.
Cool.
Painting on road RC body right now as we speak.
Nice.
That's because Janae's doing TTO2 racing.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
her and Scott. Oh, I think Scott already has his truck going right now. So we'll see. We'll see what on road turns into. Right now, I think Justin's planning a track change over at Northwest Hobbies. Speaking of Northwest Hobbies, that's our home track right now. It's located in Albany, Oregon, in the Heritage Mall. If you know where that is, or if you've been around for Albany, it's located where the old Sears building was. Um, Pretty much right around the mall from Hobby Lobby. Pretty close. Snowboards or drift? Is that Lance, like our Lance? Probably.
I'm not sure.
Snowboards aren't drift? Oh, come on. Anyway. To do. Oh, Colorado. Right on. I do prefer Colorado over Oregon. It's in terms of like winters there. It's more dry, so like it can be cold, but it's not like that cold.
Never been, so we'll see
Yeah.
someday.
No, we'll go. We'll go like next month, or yeah, next month of January.
You're
January.
going
Yeah, you have my old board. You should be going too.
to Colorado.
Oh, not to Colorado, no.
I thought that's what you meant.
Oh no, I haven't been snowboarding in Colorado. I would like to, but then every time I think about it, I get really off put because like carrying your snowboard on a plane is expensive.
Yes.
And renting is kind of like not my thing. So that's yeah. I'd rather have my own stuff there.
Oh, Scale Science is in Colorado.
Yeah, they probably know Rob Nick there.
In Colorado?
Yeah. Cuz like
Cool.
Rob would basically go over from Nebraska. He'd catch a flight over to Colorado
Nice.
and then go about it that way. Okay. So, yeah. Really
Okay.
car is done. I definitely say I'm gonna grab a Drift RC. Well, keep your eyes out, Paul. I think Cody's gonna buy my SX3, which
Oh,
is
yeah. He's buying a car again? Because I thought he got out of it.
he got out of it, yeah, but I think he's gonna come back.
Cool. Yeah, he was there last Sunday, right? Back, Cody?
Yeah, just to kind of like hang out and stuff.
Hmm.
He brought a pizza, or he usually
Yeah,
brings pizza.
yeah, he brought it like after we ate.
Yeah, I mean it's Little Caesars though. So
Eh,
Little Caesars is, well, it's not $5 a pizza anymore. That's for sure.
yeah.
That's too bad, but at the same time, I don't know. It's, I guess food is food. If you care about quality, that matters to you. But yeah. So Cody was probably gonna buy my SX3, and then that's basically my gateway into an MD1.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's official. It's gonna be an MD1, because I bought the 4 gear trans parts and some body mounts yesterday. So
There's dirt racing videos on here in the chat. He said he's gonna buy a drift car when he finishes the real car. So,
yeah, that's Paul.
oh, that's Paul. Okay,
Yeah, that's
cool.
Paul.
I was like, who is this guy? It's weird because YouTube doesn't have all the nicknames that we give them.
Right,
So the
right.
names. So
Is it $5 quality? Yes. It's worse than $5 quality. Like, it's Little Caesars pizza. There's nothing good about it. It's just food that you put in your body and then kind of like let it. It's it's on the same position as Panda, at least for me, because Panda, like when you eat it, it literally like sits in the bottom of your stomach, and I can't do that.
it could be depends on how much you eat. Because I'm learning that if I don't eat all of the panda, I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah. I need to learn how to limit food intake. So let's get into topics here.
Okay.
Basically, we wanted to start off with just like who we are, who John and I are, uh like why we're into drift, why we're like in that part of the hobby, and then one thing that we wanted to cover is ESC settings, because on this channel here, someone was asking about settings, so we'll go ahead and go over the many different settings that you can find in speed controls and whatever whatever we can find about like Acuvance and Hobby Wing and all that fun stuff. Want to start, John?
Okay. So I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm John, and I started drifting way back. Geez, I want to say like 2007 or 2008 is when I started. It was back in the Tamiya 4-wheel drive, one way style drifting. And then I got into Yokomo um, from some guy from Seattle. I got introduced to the Yokomo chassis, and then I got introduced to counter steer, and then eventually rear wheel drive. So,
Guy from Seattle, was that James?
yep, James got me into a Yokomo, and it started from there.
The DP, right?
Yep, basically OGDP. Um, when you have to do a one-way shaft to like get the whole e-braking deal going.
Oh,
So,
counter steer. Right,
yep.
right.
No. Yeah. So when it was 4-wheel drive, if you did the one-way bearing or the one-way shaft, it allows you to like emulate the e-brake, I guess, when you're tapping on it, because it'll brake on the rear but not the front.
Right.
So,
Yep, because it's a one-way bearing up front, and
but it could be the front or the shaft.
so it's technically the front. The one way was actually a part of the shaft, like the bearing was on the shaft itself.
Yep, exactly. Uh-huh.
But I mean, usually it's on like the spool diff or the diff pulley in the front for belt
Mhm.
driven cars.
And
What is
then, so yeah, what about you?
as far as drifting goes? Let's see. It started way back when Sanyam Hobbies was like around. Uh, and my first kit was an HPI. It was a Hot Bodies TCFD. So same as you, it was all-wheel drive, belt-driven, and it was supposed to be like the coolest kit for drifting. They promised counter steer, like counter steer style, so the rear wheels would be overdriven, so you could simulate well, the push, I guess you could say, or the
The rear
need to
wheel.
counter
Yep.
steer. Yep. Yep. I got that, and then I met Chuck. You know Chuck. um, and basically he introduced me to a the Sakura D3. So way back when it was a cheap, what, like $99 chassis.
Yep. I think I
Um,
had one of those at one point, or maybe a D4. Maybe a D4.
you had a D4. I don't think you had a D3. Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. Um, but yeah, I met Chuck at Tuner Coalition meet. Basically, it was the Deuces Wild poker run, and that's when we started doing our thing. Then we started getting involved with Hot Import Nights and whatnot. Which Hot Import Nights is December 3rd. Hopefully, we can get a spot there and put down a track. So that'd be cool. We're just waiting on the coordinator to like step in and say, "Hey, you can do it."
Right. Hopefully.
Yep.
Fingers.
I mean, from the other guys, from the other local guy, well, I guess not local guys, but from the other guys, pretty much we can execute like as fast as we can. Like we just need to know that like we have a spot. Um, yeah. Let's see. I
Uh,
guess. Well, So from there, like that was the 4-wheel drive stuff. I had like quite a few chassis, like a DIB D3. I had a MST FXX. Like that was my first rear-wheel drive car, which I thought was like the most horrible purchase in the world because I didn't know how to tune for it. And then I got an RMX, which was kind of the same idea. Like I didn't like it was a better purchase and it felt better, but it was designed as a 4-wheel drive car that you could turn into rear-wheel drive. Um, so there was that, and then yeah, then rear-wheel drive started. So main chassis right now are a YD2ZX, a Midnight Mini MC1 conversion, which is a 225 wheelbase, and what else do I drive? Those are my two main cars right now. What about you, John?
right now, I just have the MC1 convert, basically SX3 converted to MC1, and then I have the Midnight Mini um, that you have also. I think on that one I'm running like a Z Trans versus like a SX3 Trans. Like originally, I had the wrap up kit, but I converted it to the Z so I can run full 3D printed part that's provided by one of our local guys. So right now those are the two, but I am planning on rebuilding the mini wrap up just to have another chassis. And hopefully it would be more like budget friendly, but it's never budget friendly.
I mean, but it can be, right?
It can
Like,
be.
as far as drift, right? Let's talk about that. So, as far
Mhm.
as drift goes, like, it never actually has to be that expensive. Bust Nux at the MST MRX. I don't think anyone in the States has them yet. Um, Pretty much all the builds that I've been seeing lately are like across the pond. Um, it's an interesting thing. The MRX is an interesting chassis, but I don't see it really like being, let's say, a competitive chassis. Just the way that it's built. Um, Wrap Up Next did it first. Sorry.
I actually haven't even seen a photo of the MRX GT.
No, let's pull one up. Let me get the.
I got it. I'll pull it up. Oh, you got it on your side?
Well, I mean, I can. Hold on. We're gonna use the Super Jeep. Oh, should I use this? No, we'll just use. Do, do, do.
Oh, okay. I see. Actually, it pulled up the Super G website for me.
It would. It would
Right.
pull up the Super G website.
Maybe because I've seen. Yeah. So I believe, yeah, Wrap Up did that first, if I'm not mistaken, like you said.
All right, let me see if I can do And you need to do window capture. Oh, that's really big.
Okay, so while you're doing that, the question for you is why, out of all the RC platforms, right? We have monster trucks, rock crawling, buggy racing, truggy racing, racing in general. Why RC drifting? Why did you gravitate towards RC drifting more than the other style of RC cars or trucks?
Why?
Hmm.
Okay. So the why is essentially, for me at least, RC drifting is a little bit more about the tuning aspect of things. I've been racing. I've been. Have I been crawling? Technically, no. I have a crawler, and I have an SAX 24, but like it just doesn't interest me into that way of like. It's not in the same depth that I'm in for RC drifting. Racing for me, too much drama, too much money to play, if that makes sense. Which is kind of odd because we put so much money into our drift cars. Um, but like if you think about it, we just had the JCon and the Roar races just a few months ago, like in April and June, I think. Um, or May and June. I don't know, or June. I don't know. They were back to back. Um, Essentially, like the people that I know that race for Northwest or at Northwest, like the amount of money just for tires for each of those races was like around $300 per person. Not that they had to, but they had to be competitive. Just like you have to buy like a good motor, good ESC, make sure that your car is like in tune with itself, or is like a certain lightness, I guess you could say. And then just it's such a hyped up crowd to begin with. Like it's think of it this way: as far as the amount of money that you spend in a drift car, it's an infinite more amount just because of tires, just because of broken arms, just because of the things that you always have to buy and replace. Like there's no changing that. So it's kind of like in drift world, well, what do we have to spend? We have to like our initial chassis, um, and then like whatever upgrades that we want. In fact, like the way that shops are making money on drift is just by like your upgrade path. It's not because of the wheels and the tires, um, and it's not because we're breaking parts. Although, like we'll have our occasional like plug in the ESC backwards, or just something stupid happens, right? Like,
Or blowing up a motor.
yep, that's what I was going. That's where I was going. Okay, for what it's worth, Acuvance motors, you're not supposed to exceed like 90,000 RPMs or something like that. We were well above that. I
Yeah,
think, I
I mean,
think
we can be above that.
well, according to the telemetry, I think Philip was hitting like 120 RPMs or 120,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
And what did Lance say?
Something about a D5 can play with us on a close to similar level.
With
I
stupid chats? Yeah.
So, well, I feel like, yeah, right. So you're like with drifting, depending on your tuning, because it's not gonna be similar. Like your tuning is different from mine, but we can drive each other's car. Same with Lance's car. Lance's cars are, when he drives it, he's fast and it's pretty steady, or what's the word I'm looking for? Consistent.
Hmm.
But if I'm driving it, it's a different story. Uh, I think it's just how well you are, or how well you are using your car, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I I put it
So,
every. I put it this way. Did you see my blanket?
yeah, burrito blanket.
Oh.
So,
Um, I put it this way to everybody that's like interested. As far as RC drifting goes, as far as rear wheel drive goes, like when we're tuning for like you. We're not tuning for like I'm not tuning for you. Like when I'm driving your car, I know that your car is going to be different, which is funny because like every time I drive your car, for the most part, I'm usually saying to myself, "Hey, I want my car to drive like this," which is
And
funny.
because I say the same thing, like, "Hey, Adam, what's wrong with my car? It's not driving like yours." So, but we keep going back. Fledge 10.5, good motor.
Yes,
Um, mhm.
I have one.
Yeah, it comes down to preference and what you're buying. There are, I feel like there are good things since we're getting into that topic. There are good motors and then bad motors. Yes, you can run any brushless motor and start drifting, or even a brushed motor. The problem is you're not going to get the same consistency or the smooth level of how it operates. Some of them will cog, even if it's censored, just because of the torque factor of the motor. You can run a box stock MST motor. It's not going to compare to, like, say, an Accuvance or a Futaba setup. So it just depends. But yeah, Fletch is pretty good. Adam has one. I've driven it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so when you're talking about Accuvance motors, though, it's either like so they have the Fledge, they have the Agile, and then they have the BS Dual. The BS Dual is kind of like their budget motor, which is honestly it's awesome. That's what I'm driving on my ZX right now. The Fledge is in my Mini, which it still feels amazing. Um, and then you John, have the Agile. In what's it in now? Is it in your MC1?
And it's in the MC1, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, for those of you who haven't like looked up the specifications or anything like that, um, there's let's see, I believe the Agile just out of stock, like box stock, Agile is gonna have lower RPMs but higher torque, whereas the Fledge is gonna have that the higher RPMs. Both of them are smooth because they're not like overbearing on the torque factor. So usually, I think Lance will typically prefer an agile with, I think, the next level up torque rotor. And time again, if you like, I saw Steve Fujita's post earlier today, and it was talking about Fledge motor with the upgraded torque rotor. So that's something I've yet to try yet. I think it would be good. Because yes, we do need a little bit of torque in our cars, especially if our cars are a little bit heavier. Um, that's why like D10 is such a controversial. The Hobbywing D10 is such a controversial motor for me because it has no torque. But you can rev it sky high and it's completely okay. So
And
I
then
think as far as my motors go, I'll probably stick with Accuvance. Accuvance, then Rev D, then Yokomo. The Hobby Wings are just under that.
cool.
Lance says Agile with a level 45, whatever rotor, or whatever rotor.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw that too. And then let's see.
I think I need to figure out how to speed up the stream because it's 20, according to OBS, it's 20 seconds behind. I should be
Yeah,
able to fix that.
I noticed that, so I don't even. I kind of look over for the chat, but anyways, so in our RC drifting, what events have you participated in, and how well did you do?
Honestly, I kind of avoid competing, at least nowadays. Way back
Wait,
when,
you avoid competing?
yeah, I mean, uh, for what it's worth, I'm more interested in running and making sure that the event is smooth, um, more so than competing because I have trust issues. it,
As
it
far as the event, trust issues or trust issues with the other competitors?
the event, it's kind of one of those things where it's like I need things to run properly and I want them to run good. Um, but I need help too. So if you are helping, just know that I trust you, and that's, I hope, something that's positive that comes from that. Like
Okay.
judging's never easy, right? Judging is never easy because you have all the calls that you need to make, and then you have all the people that are going to watch and like combat those calls. So it's it's a give and take thing. Me, hopefully, I can just stick to taking pictures. Hopefully, Phil is gonna make it back for
Oh, in
the
January.
yeah for the January competition.
Okay, so for you guys that doesn't know yet, there is going to be a competition at Northwest Hobbies in Albany. Uh, Adam's going to facilitate or host the event. It's going to be a full-on drift competition. Some rules and things might change, so I guess follow the event and see where it goes.
Yep. Uh, biggest thing here is going to be no contact. Um, but it seems like we got into a little bit more trouble than we wanted as far as the contact rules go.
Mhm.
Um, just trying to make everything black and white rules so that we don't have any like none of the gray area that we want to run into because
Okay,
that's never pretty.
cool. So since we kind of got in the topic of like what components we should have for drifting, do
Hmm.
you want to go over like a basic, like if I was starting out, give me a rundown of what I should look out for or what components I should buy, or is buying like say a Tamiya drift car or um, let's say MST, Yokomo, uh, just the basic, nothing crazy because I know everybody's on a entry level budget, especially starting out. Um, what would you recommend? Because I know what I would recommend as far as the basic.
It
So
depends, right? It really depends because what are we doing at the end of it at the end of it?
okay, let's say I just want to play around. Like I see you guys drifting, or I see us drifting, um, I see you guys drifting at Northwest, and I want to start. I'm
Mhm.
excited about it. I like cars. I've always wanted to drift, but I've never jumped into getting an actual RC drift car because again, it's not cheap. We know that. So like for a beginner chassis, like I want my budget is $500. What should I look into?
So we're dealing with that price point. Um, it's really gonna be stuck to like even at $500, your best bet's going to be a MST RMX,
Okay.
either the 2.0 or the I believe the 2.5 RS is or 2.5S is going to be released pretty soon as an
Okay.
RTR. Hopefully the price doesn't increase too much off of that. Right now, the current going price is at least for most places is like $380, I believe. Let's check the AMain website. RMX. Yeah, so 390 actually.
Okay.
That'll get you an RMX 2.0 with your radio and electronics and everything, right? The only thing that you do have to buy is the battery and the charger, which is probably going to run you at least another $100 or so. So, 389, 489. There's your $500.
Okay.
Even if you went a D5 though, right? So you're probably looking at a little bit more than that. So D5, actually, give me a second.
Okay. Well, because there's always a debate, right? If you're doing so let's say you're doing a D5. So basically, you're building a kit that doesn't have any electronics, and then you're adding your own electronics. So this is where it can get expensive because you're buying a radio, and then you're buying motor ESC, gyro, servo, wheels and tires, and a body. Or depending on how you purchase it. Um, I feel like the MST is always going to be a better buy just because it's a full RTR plus batteries and charger.
As far as your price goes, yeah. As far as the car goes, it is that the beginner level car. It does handle and it can be upgraded to competition level, but I'd still leave it at like the taste to get you hooked, basically.
Okay. Um, Go ahead.
Like, so everything is dependent upon like how honestly how deep your pockets are, or how far into the in the scene that you want to go. If all you want is something to try, then stick with the RMX. If you know that you're going to compete, you might as well be like all the rest of them and get a Yokomo something, right? Um, just because you know that the chassis is competitive and you know that you're going to be able to keep up. Um, the RevD RDX is coming out pretty soon here. Hopefully, I think it's shooting for December release.
Okay.
Um, and then there's a let's see. So as far as new chassis go, like there's the MD1 from Yokomo, the SD 1.0 from Yokomo, the RevD RDX, the MST MRX, right? So
Mhm.
all of those are new chassis. I'm pretty sure we'll still see variants and chassis conversions of every sort. Um, but as far as getting into it, go to your track. Go to your local track. Like if you have a local track, go to your local track. Figure out when everyone's gonna go there, and then nicely ask if you can drive one of their cars,
Okay.
and then
So
just get it. Yeah.
let's talk about basic component as far as like if we were building a kit. I
Okay.
do want to go over that a little bit
Yeah.
because there
Yeah.
are a lot of like talks about, oh yeah, you could just, like I said, you can run whatever you want starting out, but there's always a component that's made for drifting, and I believe that 100%.
Right. Okay. My bad. Let me get back on topic. Um. So let's start off with the base kit of the RMX, right? Because
Mhm.
pretty much it has stock MST electronics, which is a sensorless brushless motor with a pretty bottom tier ESC, and then like a generic servo, and the generic radio that you can get in like every single RTR that you can find out there, right? Um, so the initial thing that you run into, at least at our track, is that you don't have enough like wheel speed. So as far as like the electronics go, you'd be looking into like either like an ESC and motor upgrade, or even um, the servo and the radio. The biggest thing I would say, like as far as a first step goes for the RMX, as as far as electronics goes, right? Um, I would even just stick to just a better receiver, a better radio and transmitter. Just by that upgrade alone, you'll get rid of like the weird firm springy feeling of the RMX radio, of the MST radio or the RTR radio. Um, and then basically you'll get improved latency between you and the car. So win-win as far as that goes. You can get a Futaba 3PV for like what, $150. A Main has their 4 p.m. on sale for 225 or something. It's like $40 off. Um, you can get the Noble, the Sky Fly Sky Noble, for 250. So like all of
I
those
thought
are the
about
mid range,
those.
huh?
I thought about getting one of those.
They're
Like,
cool.
they
Like
didn't have a.
yeah, apparently they fixed the binding on the newer receivers where it's a push button, whereas before it was just your standard
Vine plug.
bind plug. Yep.
My other question is, oh, well, I guess another thing I want to touch base on is servos, because
Yep.
I know you run your RevD servos, and I'm still stuck on my Yokomo servos. Um, I know people are using much more back in the day. Or so this one, I want to say definitely buy a drift servo. You can either use the RevD servos because everybody somehow uses those except for me because I can't use them. I run my gyro kind of high, so it does shake for me. And if you're doing style points and drifting when it's shaking, then it's not, it doesn't look cool. And it's points against you. So I'm using Yokomo servos because they do have the anti-shake and they go high enough that if you're running your gyro at a high rate like I am, it eliminates the shaking of the servo. So I think Busted Nux would, that's part of the info you want to know. Definitely spend the money on a servo that would work for your driving style.
Hey, just to put in here, Busted Nux. If you just want to throw your questions in chat, we'll be more than happy to answer them. We just need
Yeah,
to know what your questions are.
he said we're answering as he's thinking of it.
Oh,
So
okay, okay. We're preemptively, we're preemptively answering questions. Okay.
so I think that's one of the components that you definitely need, especially if you are gonna run rear wheel drive, is the servo. I recommend spending the money on an actual drift servo, RevD, Yokomo, and then if you got deep pockets, the Futaba ones are pretty good too. Adam has one of those that we played with,
I've got two.
and you do have to tune it. You do have to tune that servo to for your driving style.
Yes, yes, you do. But at the same time, it's on the same level as our as the Futaba 550 gyro, because you can program it. You have so much more open, like the world opens up because you have that much more tunability. Um, because the way that I see it is that you can have your typical electronics, right? So since we're talking about servos, you can have the MST servo, right? You can have an Oniseki servo. You can have a much more Rev D Yokomo servo, right? Out of those, you there are like race servos and drift servos, right? And you can tune your car. You can tune your car to make it not shake. And as long as you're okay with that, and as long as you're like okay to drive your car like that, then it's perfectly fine. Like what John was saying, if you start to see the wheel shake, not only does it like look bad, um, it inhibits your predictability of your car, because like once it's shaking, if your car is reacting to it, like going left and right, and you can see it there, um, basically it's you don't know if you're on like the good side or the bad side when you're trying to turn. So the more consistent, the more stable that you can get that, the better off your driving's gonna be. Got a Rev D servo on order and my Noble ready to go into my RMX when it gets here. Right on. That's a
Oh
good
yeah.
combo. Um,
Uh, let's talk about gyro.
yep, that. So, what gyro are you gonna go with, Busted next?
So
And
I guess I'll start. It's so for the gyro, I'm a little spoiled because I'm running the GYD 550 from Futaba.
yep,
Uh, Now nothing's wrong with the Yokomo one. Nothing's wrong with the RMX or MST one, depending on which model of gyro. There's D-Likes, Onishiki, RevD has one. Um,
hey Sam.
hey Sam. But yeah, so for the gyro, it it's hard to, let's see, to explain it better. It will come down to your preferences. Like if I was starting out again and I just had the MST, um, I would just have the MST set up, right? And that would be adequate enough for me. But now that I'm driving on a higher level, I would say the Futaba definitely works better for me. Um, so I know Adam has a few different gyros, but Busted Nux, Yokomo works. I had the Yokomo V4 when I first got back into RC drifting about what 2 years ago. I think, yeah, 2020 ish, 2021, yeah, 2020, 20, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
December
yeah.
2020, yeah. So when I got back in, it was the Yokomo V4 is what I got into, and it worked great for me. Back in the day when all I had was a plastic chassis from Yokomo, I think it was the, oh my god, I don't remember which one it was. YD2S something.
I'm
Yeah,
guessing
that's
this is Mitch. V4 should be here Monday. Anyways, sorry.
cool. Awesome. Yeah, sorry, the chat got us sidetracked a little bit because we're reading. But yeah, so I think it's preference, but I would say Yokomo or GYD 550 is my go-to. Um, Mainly because I know how to tune or work with both. The Yokomo V4, just because I did that, and then hey Jason. But yeah, so um, with the GYD 550, Adam and I learned together on how to use it and how to tune. Um, Adam will be a little bit more proficient on them because it's Adam. But
Well,
yeah, what's your opinion?
okay. So, out of all the gyros that are available today, you can never go wrong with the V4, right? Yokomo V4 is awesome.
I
You have
agree.
endpoint adjustments. I think there's like the cheaper Power HD gyro or whatever it is that still has endpoints, which is awesome. The new MST gyro that came out, that's coming with their new RTR kits, like the GRX something. I don't know. It's basically like a ripoff of the Yokomo's gyro. It's basically a V4. Actually, honestly, it's more like the Rev D. It's more like the Revox gyro than the V4 does, because the MST will have different profiles that you can click through to set for different like style of track. The Rev D Revox has 6 levels of that basically, for the amount of adjustment or assistance that you need for like quicker transitions. Um, is that bald Jason, by the way?
Yes, that's Uncle Jason.
That's Uncle Jason.
Yep.
We need to go play pinball again.
Yep. Maybe
Or,
we'll go Thanksgiving night.
I mean, we still need to go check out the pinball place up over by K1. Like, I still want to do that. The retro
Okay,
gaming place.
that'd be cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So,
now that we covered gyro, do we want to cover ESCs?
so hold on. So we didn't talk about the 550 all that much in terms of my line.
Mhm.
But like, if you were to put in a scale, I'd go Yokomo V4 at the bottom, Rev D Revox in the middle, and then Futaba 5 GYD 550 at the top. The only reason why is because as far as the GYD goes, you can essentially hide your mistakes with the GYD 550, or if your car is like heavily biased in one method or the other, like more front biased or like it's just slow to transition anyway, then you can adjust for that in the settings for the GYD 550. However,
I was listening. I was
yeah,
replying to chat.
yeah. You spelled anyway.
Uh,
um, but as far as like the GYD 550 goes, it's kind of like essentially if you don't have a Futaba radio, a 4PM or a 7PX or a 10PX or a 7PXR, then there's almost no point of getting a GYD 550. That's the truth of it. So if you're there, then stick to a Revox or a V4 or KO Propo. Alex will basically like
Swear by
go,
it.
yeah, swears by KO Propo or Co
But
Propo.
I think he drive with a KO Pro whatever radio.
Hmm. No. He drives with a 7PX. 7PX. Yeah.
Oh, Huh.
But you can still like the programmer
But
for the gyro is still like an external thing.
okay. So, yeah, I guess if that's where you're at, it's you use what you have because it looks like what's his name? Nux,
Busted
in
Nux, yeah.
Colorado. He's gonna be running the Noble, so the B4 will work perfect for him because he
Yep.
doesn't have to rely on a radio to tune it. Um, Definitely set your endpoints though.
Well, and that's the critical part of it is the
Mhm.
endpoint adjustment. So as long as it's a V4, you'll have endpoint adjustment. If it's the the previous generation where it doesn't, that's where we get into like, well, now you're that far behind, and that's where you'll start to see like problems if you don't have your, well, even if you have your radio endpoint set, your gyro can still go the full length. So that's the problem with not having the endpoint adjustment. Who's a
Chris
better drifter?
Chris is trying to stir the pot.
Wait, who is it?
um, I'll answer that. Actually, so if you're asking between me and Adam,
It's not
I
me.
think we drive on the same level, like 100%. Adam has like his ways of driving that I don't drive. Like he drives on a his driving is more technical. He hits it more technical lines or race lines in some ways. I go for style points. If you notice, like when we're drifting out on the track, it's either I'm always following or he's following. It just depends on our mood. But I think if we were to compete, it would be at least a one more time once. Yeah, and if you ask me who's better than me, I couldn't tell you because I
Uh,
don't pay attention to other drivers. I mean,
on it,
if I'm following you, I'll I'm paying attention to you. But if you're driving behind me all the time, I'm not gonna notice how you drive because when I'm on a track, I'm more focused on my car or who I'm following. As far as competition goes, there's been competition like I did a few second places. I don't think I've ever gotten first place except for some just like random pump. So, um, yeah,
J- Jason. It's only when he has the school bus. Only
yeah.
when he
Only
has
if
the
he's
school
driving a
bus.
school bus. Uh, if you guys don't know, there's a guy named Bill, and he does drive. I think it's a Yokomo YD2, and he had a school bus body for it,
Back
and
in the
then
day, it was an RRX.
it could be an RRX still. I'm not sure. So, but Chris,
Back,
are you gonna be there tomorrow? We're gonna be drifting, so join us.
maybe.
Yeah.
Team Jake. Okay. So I don't know what it is, right? So like all of the new guys that are not a part of like the core group, they fear Jake for some reason, right? Because Jake is Jake. Jake has that aura of Jake of Team Jake, and it's hilarious. I mean, I guess he is the guy that will kind of come and yell at you first, but other than that, yeah, like it's a weird Jake aura. Parma school bus.
Yeah, I think Chris, you're correct, and Jason, you're correct too. It's been a minute. Like you guys haven't. Well, at least Jason and Bill hasn't driven with us in a long time.
No, Jason tried and then he gave up.
Well, no, Jason didn't want to give up football Sunday or Sunday football.
Yeah, he
That's
gave
what.
up. I don't fear Jake. Yes, Jake is intimidating. Like Zach, like that's his thing. It was like the entire competition before, right? It was like, oh wait, it's because he got taken out by Jake.
Well, no, I think it's everybody's intimidated once they step up to drive with somebody, especially on a competition.
No, everybody
It is
sucks when they
nerve-wracking.
say go. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if we're just tandeming like random tandems, yeah, no big deal. Like I'll tandem with anybody, But the minute that we say it's a competition, the nervousness is different. So,
Yeah.
and then, so okay, do we want to do? It's all
So
personal progress.
it is all personal preference.
Oh,
More
no, he
like,
said.
wait, what?
Oh, Sam's comment.
Stop comparing yourself. I mean, that's what competition's for, right?
It's not comparing. At the end of the day, it's we all tandem on the same track. We go and we hang out. We had fun. It's all about the fun. I think for me, mainly, a lot of the times is hanging out with all of you guys out there. Like the more people I meet, the more knowledge I get, and just getting to know everybody. Because I didn't know Adam. We'll talk about how I met Adam. So one day we were at a drift track. Well, it's not even a drift track; it's a shop.
There's a,
If anybody remembers, it's VIP Performance in Portland. The old owner decided he was going to invite all the RC drifter and let us drift at their garage or shop. They cleared out the shop and laid down a track. I had my,
it
I
was a
think,
Yokomo. It was the DP.
yep, it's a DP, and we just started drifting, and then Adam's car was faster. He was faster than me, so I was like, "Hey!" And this is when I think I was still learning how to drive rear wheel drive. Um, we, I asked him, "Hey, could you help me out? Like, I want to be as fast as you are." So he grabbed my chassis, showed me a couple of things, and then by the end of the day, the vibes there. Like Busted Nuck said, we were just vibing, and so ever since then we kept talking. We didn't, yeah, until now, 6 or 7 years later, we're still at it. um, so that's how we met. And meeting people that you're going to be friends with for a while, like Adam and I, or Jason and Chris. I've known Chris ever since Hobbytown drifting with um, the Tamiyas and then the Yokomos. So it's kind of wild when you think about it in that perspective. So um, yeah. So next one is, do we want to go over some settings and whatnot?
Yep, yep. Let's actually talk about the topics. Sam says the best RC car is the one that puts the biggest smile on your face. Kevin Kevin Talbot.
I've been
He's the YouTuber.
actually I tried watching his YouTube video, Kevin Talbot,
hmm
because I've been looking into getting some basher, and like I was thinking about maybe either the Arma Notorious again, and then maybe like a Traxxas Max. But yeah, I kind of tried watching that. I'll have to give it another try because last time I couldn't watch the whole thing. So, all right, let's do. Hey, Marcus. Let's talk about ESC settings, Adam. Which one do you want to cover first? Do you want to do your
I mean,
Futaba? Want to go Yokomo, Hobby Wing? How do you
so
want to talk about this?
so Futaba is the same as Acuvance. Let's get that straight right now. Let me go grab the Tau and let's talk about Acuvance.
Okay.
I'll be back.
Sam, what do you mean you're gonna pass out? Like fall asleep? And Marcus, we need to go drifting. RC or real car.
Oh, I was gonna say that's probably directed at real drifting.
Well, I mean, either one. Marcus does drift with us or was drifting with us, but like everyone else, life happens and sometimes we have to step away for a little bit.
Nah, you don't have to step away.
I did for a little bit, remember? I didn't drift for so long until like 2015, 16, maybe.
Well, I think that was both of
Later,
us
Sam.
because we basically lost our place to go to. Tracks come and go. That's the thing. That's the unfortunate thing.
That is very true.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pull up the. Are we gonna say Jarvis or are we gonna say Zarvis?
It's up to you. I think in general, like we're not really being specific, right? Because there's different options for drifting.
Okay, we're gonna say Jarvis.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so as far as the AccuBand settings go, this one is gonna be based off of kilohertz, right? So for a few of their settings for like frequencies, um, and then there's just like the others. We'll go through one like each one by one. Um, so just looking off of this Tau here, the Tau 3 is the programmer that I'm looking at right now. However, all of my cars, I use the S Bus adapter with the 7PXR, and that's
That's
how I
what
tune.
I'm about to do is pull it up on mine because I have to use the 10px to see my settings.
Well, all my cars have fans, which reminds me, I need to replace one of my fans on my ZX because it's dead. Um, so let's start off with drive frequency. So if you're looking at your settings, the first thing that you'll pretty much see is drive frequency. That's on page one of your S bus settings, should be on page one of your Tau settings as well. If it says frequency or if your ESC is reporting in frequency, like kilohertz per second or just kilohertz, um, think of it this way: the higher the number it is, the more smooth it's gonna be, right? Um, so think of it as samples, right? So we'll just say like 1 to 32, not 1,000, right? Um, Basically, if it's 1 or 0, then it's gonna be on or off. And then if you keep on going up all the way up to 32, you have 32 chances to like capture where your trigger pull is gonna be. So from a value of like 1 to 100 or 0 to 100, like 32 is going to be the amount of times like during that cycle that it can check. So in reality, um, 32 kilohertz or 32 kilohertz is going to respond more smoothly, or is going to be perceived as more smooth. And that's going to be the same thing with any of these frequencies. So like the next is neutral break frequency. I guess step backwards a little bit. So the lower that you go in the frequency, think of it as like a more punchy response. So like I said earlier, if we're only thinking of 0 or 1, like 1 is going to be on at like 100%, not roughly, right? um, and then 0 is just off, right? Or you have that one chance to either to like put your finger in that position, and that's what it's going to be read as, right? So lower numbers equals more punch or more aggressive. Higher numbers are going to equal like more smooth and well, yeah, more smooth overall. Um,
So, um, you say more punch, but is that does that mean is it uh,
it's more of an abrupt feeling, right? So
so it's more reactive? It's not
yes,
dull.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. So think of it this way: if we have like 0 to 100, and then like our finger is supposedly at 50% when it turns like when it cycles over and does that sample, well it's going to see 50%, and like even if our trigger finger is moving throughout the trigger pull and it sees whatever number that it is, right? So like if you pull full trigger at 32 kilohertz, it's going to see like 124, 48, 112, blah blah blah, all the way up to, well, I just went over 100, but versus like if you have one sample, you could see like 10, 25, 50, like at any given point. So you're still using the same amount of throttle at any given point, but as far as like where it's being seen, there's less of a chance for you to um, be more precise, I guess you could say. Um,
So, well, I mean to answer it, the lower the number, the more precise that the feel would be. Um,
No, the higher the number, the more precise it is.
So the lower the number, the more forgiving it is.
No. No. So higher number is more forgiving, more smooth. Lower number is if you want more of it. So let's take the break, because break frequency is one of these too. So say
Mhm.
if we want a more powerful break, if we want a more abrupt break, then we're gonna see like set it to 1 kilohertz, set it to 4 kilohertz. If you go up above and like you're just barely nudging your break, uh, like on initiation, then it's not necessarily going to be that much. So it's kind of like the sprint booster. Have you heard of the sprint booster for cars?
Yeah.
So basically what they're doing is instead of like just following the natural pedal feel of your car, even though that it's electronic these days, um, the sprint booster is gonna like remap that, right? So it feels more aggressive, right? So if
Mhm.
we go lower, the more aggressive that number is, or the brake is going to be. So same thing with throttle, same thing with the drag brake or the neutral brake. If you go
Mhm.
lower, the more abrupt those changes are going to be.
Okay.
And that goes
That
for
makes
any
sense.
ESC that goes by that method, right?
Hmm.
Um, less is more, more is more precise. Hopefully that made it through. Did that make sense?
It's just it's weird because I know we've been talking a lot about this in the past. I to me it just doesn't. I guess it doesn't come across properly. Like because I'm thinking of it. You said the higher the number is, the more precise,
Right.
but the lower the number, it's more. Does that make sense? Like
It's more abrupt.
okay,
So
more
so
abrupt, but more reactive. But does it change? So, like the lower the number, it's less frequencies, right? So, like say if I does it. So let's do an explanation of 1 to 1 or 1 to 25.
okay.
So 1 to 1 is very direct. So
Yes.
having the lower frequency is going to be a more direct feel. And I think I have a point, but bear with me. So
Yes, Busted Nuts Tau 3 has AI settings, but only if you're using the RAD, the new RAD that they just released, or this Jarvis XX. It does not have it on the just the regular Jarvis.
okay. So 1 to 1, if it's a lower frequency, let's just say 16 is 1 to 1. So that's going to be more precise or more 1 to 1 aspect. Is that
Okay.
correct? Is that correct?
Sure.
Like the lower the frequency is, the more the closest to 1 to 1 it feels like. Yeah?
Here, let me rephrase it, okay? Into something that we'll be able to more understand. Gear ratios. Okay,
Hmm.
so you ride Groms, and typically you would either put a what are you typically changing? Are you changing the sprocket on the wheel or on the motor?
Both.
Okay, okay,
Depending on what I'm trying to do.
okay. So mm, uh, let's
Same,
go.
same with the pinion gear. Let's go pinion gear because
Yeah,
that's what
okay,
we
okay.
have.
So we're gonna go pinion gears. So
Okay.
so
Pinion gear and
typically
brake.
typically stock gearing on a YD2 is 84, and it comes with a 20 tooth pinion, right? So
Okay.
84 spur, 20 pinion. Whatever that trigger feels like that's what it is on the radio, right? So we go down a gear on the pinion, right? So instead of running 20, now we're running 16, and now we have a higher FDR, right? So now the trigger pull, instead of being like the original trigger pull, it feels like we have a really short trigger pull, right? Because to get to the same RPMs, we need to go from 0 to, well, even higher than 100, right? So we'll get to boost faster, turbo faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
versus the opposite where we put on a bigger pinion, like if we're going to throw on a 24 tooth pinion, then since we're forcing the motor for same RPMs, but the spur gear is going to rotate more essentially, right? So lower FDR, our trigger pull is now like really really long, um, to get into turbo versus what it was before, because the motor is still turning the same RPMs, but it effectively it's got a larger pinion on there, so it's going to move that spur gear even more, even faster. So
Mm-hmm.
effectively, the smaller pinion is the smaller kilohertz, the smaller sample number. The bigger pinion is going to be the larger pinion, or larger, like 32 kilohertz.
Okay. So with that question, or with that note, now when you're to get a more of a feel, do you have to mess with your expo? And that's the only reason why I was asking if the lower kilohertz is more like more one-to-one feel versus the 32.
So technically, everything is still a one-to-one feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because 1 is 1, 16 is going to be 16, 100 is going to be 100. It's just
Mm-hmm.
how many steps are there going to be in between 1 to 100.
Okay.
Does that
That's
make
my,
more sense?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like if we talk about the audio world, then we're talking about like the subsample frequencies. So like my microphone subsampling is at 48 kilohertz. You can change it down to 41 or 44.1 kilohertz. Or if we're talking about MP3s, right? Back in the day, like the standard was like 128 kilobits per second or kilobytes per second.
Mm-hmm.
Details. But now, because of like, well, if everything is the same, then 160 is better sounding quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus that 128. So that's what we're doing with the subsampling frequencies. Um, that's what the frequencies that we're talking about on the ESE.
Okay.
Okay, so that
I
was
just have
probably
I was trying to get to the expo because with some radio, well, like my radio or most radio, there is expo settings to where the throttle is not so touchy.
right,
That's what.
right. So for you, you can relate that more towards Betaflight and drones.
Hmm.
So that expo is just like starting from zero, going up to a curve, right?
Hmm.
Or we can go the opposite way and make it like
Hmm.
really sharp to begin with, and then level out at like the higher end. So when we're adjusting that, we're adjusting for the, yeah, so throttle punch essentially is what we're adjusting. So you
Hmm.
could you could interchange for, like drive frequency for, um, if you wanted it less of a punch, then you'd put more of that expo there, more of a curve. The problem, I don't like doing that though, because then your radio is doing weird things at different points in time. So yeah, you can adjust to it, but it might not feel right in one place or another.
Hmm.
So like your your bottom end might be good versus your top end is going to be really sharp.
Okay. Well, no, that makes sense. But that's why I was asking because I was trying to correlate that from expo settings because I know like you can make your radio do weird things and have your throttle punch all up first, like a higher, more linear. So when you get past 25%, it's all boom. Or you can do a more linear straight line and then mess with your hertz, kilohertz. That I was just trying to understand that part of it because
Yep.
it always confuses me.
Yeah.
So,
So basic story though, just I say drive with a linear line, and then adjust from there. Like there are motor, like, because what we're really adjusting for is like the motor, like at that point, the
mhm.
response of the motor. So use it if needed. If you, as long as you have a good combo, then you're gonna be good with just driving a linear line. um I like when I had a Spectre motor, a much more Spectre motor 10.5 in it. It was super torquey. Even trying to adjust that, it was still never a good like combination. But yeah, you can adjust motor feel or throttle feel um, by the radio curve uh, as well, because you'll notice that um, one of the guys from Seattle explained to me that like our cars, when they're actually getting traction, it's not like as we increase the wheel speed, it's more so when the chassis is actually shifting its weight to the back, where it's digging the tires into the ground, not necessarily just
Mhm.
spinning the tires. You can see that problem with the REAR or the DP gears, right? Because they're
Mhm.
transverse. They don't have that same anti torque and the squatting that the YD2s have, or YD2 has, or like the 4 gear transmissions, or just anything with an anti torque setting.
Okay. So back to a regular topic
Yeah.
about ESC settings. So as far as drive frequency and neutral brake frequency and brake frequency, um, so drive frequency is the frequency as you pull the trigger on the throttle, and then also in reverse, right? Because that's your part of your drive.
Yep.
Your neutral brake frequency is
Also
when you're
known as drag brake.
or letting off. Yes. So that's what it is. It's when you let off and you're just on neutral. That's neutral brake frequency. Brake frequency is when you actually go push it on brake. Let's go to initial speed. Uh,
Yeah. So initial speed is basically your startup power, right? So if you have zero initial speed, then your startup power is zero, which is fine, right? As long as your motor is smooth enough and can handle that. Not that motors can't handle that, but you'll notice like a difference in between like how choppy it is on the start off, right? So if you are noticing that it is pretty choppy, then you can increase your initial speed, and it's going to provide more initial power to make your motor start. So it's like starting at 10 versus starting at 0 on a 0 to 100.
Now, for initial speed question, why? Okay, so why would we set it as low as possible versus like a little higher? Like, say, go ahead.
Yeah, so in drift, right?
Mhm.
We're not racing and we don't have like any grip. Our search is trying to find that grip, right? And then we also need like the finite controls like while going through corners. We need the more particularly the control in the lower end more than the high end. At least that's what my feeling is, right? Because
Mhm.
if we're in a corner, we're not going to be like just holding the trigger all the way down. That's going to just make us spin out. So we need that finer control at the low end. Pretty much on any like hairpin turn that I'm on, I'm going to be fluctuating within that 10% range, that first 10% range um, there. So as far as like initial speed and being set to as close to 0 as you can, that's going to give you more resolution to be able to modulate that low end like really really well.
Okay, cool. Um, Now, you mentioned that neutral brake frequency is basically drag brake.
Yes.
Now, did you mean neutral brake power is basically drag brake?
Yes.
Okay, so it
So
works hand in hand with neutral brake frequency, but the power, like so, because well, like for crawlers, if you increase the percent of your drag brake, um, that's kind of uh, of course, it would brake harder. And I feel like so neutral brake power is your initial base. It's drag brake,
yes.
right? And neutral brake frequency is just the settings on how much sampling.
Yeah. How abrupt it is
It is
over a
it's
given time.
they correlate, but one's more of a drag brake, like neutral brake power is, because you can set how heavy it would brake at neutral,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then okay. Cool. So, and then initial brake power, that's basically the power when you brake.
Yes, like where you want it to start off with.
Okay. So let's go to page 2.
Your page 2 is going to be different.
Okay. So on my page 2, basically it's the full brake power, max forward speed, max reverse speed, full boost timing, boost start rotation, and we'll get to that. 'Cause I think that's something that we could go over more. But your full brake power is basic. It's your brake,
Yeah, it's
and max
straightforward,
forward
right?
speed, it's your forward speed. Reverse speed on some of the ESCs, you do have the option to limit your reverse speed to only go a certain amount, and that's what we have. So those are the basics. Now let's talk about full boost timing, and it's going to be different for everybody as far as like the boost timing and settings. Because I think Adam runs a different boost than I do. Oh wait, no, actually you were the last one to do settings on my radio
Mm-hmm.
last Sunday.
Do I
Um,
remember? I don't remember.
well, I can remember. Sometimes I remember things. Let's talk about full boost timing.
Well,
Um,
before we do that though, the rule of thumb, like for timing as a whole, is never exceed 60 degrees of total timing. Now, that was that's pretty much written on the piece of paper that comes with your Yokomo motor, like if you buy a Yokomo motor. Um, However, if you look at today's motors and today's ESC settings, we're constantly exceeding that. So, like my settings right now is 20 degrees of boost and 25 to 30 degrees of turbo, which brings that total timing on the ESC to 45. But then I've got another 30 degrees of timing on the can of the motor as well. So 65,
Okay,
70.
let's talk about the can timing because this relates to what we're doing with the ESC.
Yep.
So when you're doing your boost on the motor, I think I'm at my car's freaking out. Okay, so I'm at 20 degrees.
Okay.
So basically, the degree is um, the higher the degrees, the higher the boost. Or sorry,
The
timing.
higher the higher the degree of boost, the higher kV that your motor is going to put out. So more revolutions, however, at the same time it's going to ding your torque. So as far as motors go, you have the spectrum of RPM versus torque. The
Hmm.
more RPMs that you go, the less torque that you'll have, right?
Hmm.
So clearly vice versa. So if we're setting our like from your motor to my motor, and every motor is different, but if we're talking about the same motor, right? Um, like if we go from 20 degrees to 30 degrees, and technically I'm losing torque, but I'm gaining RPMs, like at the top
So
end.
you lose torque when you go higher timing.
Correct.
You can. Okay.
Yep. And then that kind of goes through when we're talking about the rest of the settings as well. So we'll kind of continue to lose that torque as we go higher in the RPMs. It's also pulling more voltage from your battery as well. I'm
Okay.
I'm
So
almost
yeah.
100% on that. I'm not 100% though.
Okay. So I just want to say for some people that's still listening and they want to know, because this has always been something that I've wanted to know on the motor
Mm-hmm.
timing. So if you're lower timing, more torque. If you're higher timing, more RPM but less torque.
Right.
Okay. So let's move on to you want to explain full boost timing. Let's
Yeah.
start there.
So let's talk about boost and turbo simultaneously, because they're technically doing the same thing. They're adding time over like a certain RPM range or where your trigger pull is, right? So boost is more like a supercharger in terms of car world. It will apply pretty much over the entire RPM range if you want it to. We'll get to some specifics in a little bit, but a turbo will usually only activate at the typical thing is like full trigger pull, or like at a certain specified RPM that's like pretty darn high. So as far as like your boost goes, it's linear. It's like a supercharger, and then turbo is exactly like a turbo. It comes in later, like after your car makes boost, or
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So which one do you want to tackle next, as far as like settings?
Oh, so as far as boost, let's stick on boost for a little bit here because that's gonna affect your low end um, throttle adjustment. Uh,
Mhm.
because like I said earlier, like when we're when our cars are making traction, like actually making traction, it's when the weight is actually shifting back, and then the tires can push down and the car can go forward. Um, so for some cars, right, you want to play with like different takeoff RPMs, right? So 20, like I'm at 20 degrees because that's where like our home track feels the best. The trigger pull for what FDR I'm running a like around 11 FDR for polished concrete. um, that has enough like uh, what do you call it, sinking or squatting, there you go. It has enough squat where like it feels like the car is moving more efficiently forward than like if you just have it set to 0 and you're just trying to go right. So play with that setting, because if a lot of the times if your car isn't doing anything or if it's not aggressive enough, or better yet if we go back to the whole RMX thing, since it doesn't have like a lot of boost well, it doesn't have boost or turbo, um, the car is not actually able to move, right? So it's just gonna kind of go forward where the potential of the car is much more. Um, yeah, so play with your boost settings, play with your turbo settings. Turbo, as far as that goes, like it's more like acceleration at the end. Not necessarily to make you go faster, but to help you like either extend or continue a drift. Because turbo to me is more of a tool, not necessarily a go fast thing.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I just remembered, we were doing ESC settings. Are we specifically still talking about the AccuVents and Futaba setup?
I mean, as far as boost and turbo goes, that's pretty universal. Because I think for the most part, like most ESCs are going to be talking about degrees per second per timing, right? Um, yeah, like obviously more is more.
Right. So,
um, but yeah, like the other part of the boost and the turbo thing is the slopes, right? So you'll have like boost on slope, and then you'll have the turn off slope as well. Um, Here's the downfall of the AccuVants, because the AccuVants can, like, as far as the curves go, you can only do 25 degrees per whatever.
per second on the on slope.
But so 25 degrees per 0.1 second is what it is.
Yes. Mhm.
Where if you look at like the Hobby Wings, the much more like even um oh, what is it called, the Sky RC or G Force, or like those ESC, the Toros, right?
Mhm.
So even though they'll say that you can go like upwards of 55, 60 degrees per 0.1 second, I don't think those ESCs are able to do it. Um, but Hobbywing can, like their D10 motors require a lot. So Hobbywing can, much more can. Yokomo can definitely do like the higher rates to get to your turbo boost, turbo, like all the way through your turbo faster.
Mhm. Okay. Um, what else is on the list?
Um, do, do, do. There's a few things that we like don't ever touch, like throttle boost control. I don't actually ever touch that. Um, turbo actuation. Let's
Activation.
Yeah, activation. It just says ATV on this. Um, full throttle is typically what I do. Turbo start time. So this one's definitely up to you. I mean, I guess everything is up to you, to be honest. But turbo
Mhm.
start time, like that's gonna be the delay from when you hit your turbo point to when it actually engages. So, like, if you want to be able to hit your full throttle just by a trigger pull, and then wait for your turbo to like engage later, then you can increase that. Mine is set to off because I want my turbo like when I want it. Um, but you can like increase it by like 0.15 to like a second or something like that. Turbo off time is the same idea. Rev
Yeah.
limit. So we can actually do rev limiting on the AccuVance ESCs. Um, I think you can do it on the Hobby Wings, like the Hobby Wing Drift Spec ESCs, and I think, or I don't think, you can do it on the Sanwa ESCs. The Sanwa ESCs are the only ones that actually have the real rev limiter sound. um,
Wait, so rev limiter.
mhm.
You know, I've never paid attention to that. Like I just now like read it and it says rev limit.
Right.
So I want to touch on that a little bit. So, like you mentioned, it's not the same as the Sanwa Rev Limited Type D ESC.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do that Rev Limited.
So
Uh,
yeah,
with this,
the Sandmaw
it's,
is the only one that sounds like that, right?
okay.
Like when you
So,
hear rev limiter or banging the rev limiter, the Sandmaw is the one that like sounds like that. As far
so
as
the Futaba goes, what does it sound like, or what does it do?
So the
Or
Futaba and the AccuVance and pretty much everything else is that has rev limiting. Um, you'll hear it, and I think Alex's Golem is probably like the most significant here. Like you can hear that one the most. Um, but it's not like a loud type of rev limit. It more depends on your motor as far as like what that rev limit's going to sound like. But more so, it's really just going to be like a soft little hit at the that RPM limit essentially. Uh, you won't hear it on the track really.
okay, remind me to change it. But I'm gonna try it real quick. I set mine to 10,000 RPM, and I just want to see what it will do. So yeah, I don't hear it.
Yeah, so set it higher. Um, set so Alex has his set to 38,000
As far as
as
his
far as
limit.
his rev limiter goes.
Okay, is it just because I'm super low? Oh.
Partially, yeah.
I just want to see what it will do. Because like I said, this is the first time I've actually seen it on there. 21, 28, 38. Right.
Jake might have had it, but not anymore.
So it just sounds like it's like VTech, if that makes sense. Like it just revs louder.
Kind of. Do you have it on some sort of surface? Because like without the load, it's not going to do anything.
Oh, got you. I will figure it out tomorrow.
Anyway, so as far as rev limiting goes, the actual use for it is, I would say that it's more used to like fit your track, right? So there are multiple ways that you can fit your track, either by like the amount of boost and turbo that you run, or you like if you're not wanting the boost or wanting the turbo, you just like need the RPMs. Um, honestly, like like we did it once at Northwest, and we had like everybody set, all three of us set our ESCs to 3,800 RPMs or 38,000 RPMs, and it made trains really really easy because no one had like the advantage of being faster or anything like that. So as far as that goes, it's kind of like there's a certain speed you can drift around the track, right? And like it's enough to get around the track, but it's not enough to like be excessive about it. So it's being efficient. You can be efficient with your RPMs to be able to get around the track. Technically faster because you're using your wheel speed better.
Makes sense. I think when I did that, I limited it manually. I think so. Or yeah.
Yeah. And then there's just a few more settings that are specific to the Jarvis XX, the Jarvis XX, and the Fledge motor, and that's their torque level and the torque endpoints. I'm not exactly sure what they do because I don't have it. Like I don't have the Jarvis XX. But from what I understand, you're supposed to be able to adjust like where the maximum torque level comes into play. So that could be a beneficial thing. It's just I don't feel like I want to pay an extra what.
$100.
So yeah, an extra $100 on top of what just the Jarvis is.
And I don't think it's. I don't think we need it for drifting. Uh,
I mean,
okay,
we
so
don't know. We don't know.
we don't know, but so I've always been like, I'm still on the fence when people. Well, not on the fence. I guess I don't pay attention enough to how much torque I need because some people are like, oh, you got to run smaller pinion gear, bigger pinion gear, for more wheel speed. But I've always just kind of done what's working for me and I stick with it. So,
Right.
mhm. So yeah. Is there another settings that we got to talk about?
As far as the ESC, probably not. Busted Nux brought it up earlier about the AI settings. That would be really cool to mess around with, but like I said, I don't have a RAD or a Jarvis XX, so that will probably come at a later time. I'm
Sounds like
kind
another investment.
maybe
Hey,
like
for what's that chassis MD?
MD1.
The MD1. So I guess for your next chassis, you need a rad or a double X.
No, I'm gonna strip my wrap up mini for that.
What?
Right? I mean, I haven't like I drove it last month, but it's like I only pull that thing out like maybe once a month, if that. So it's not like it's doing anything.
So maybe if you're gonna do that, I should just drive your wrap up mini for a while.
No, no, it's decently fast, but it's not fast,
Gotcha.
right? Like as far as like the transmission style and all of that. Like if it had active tow, because that's what like the MRX is actually. Well, MRX and MST RMX 2.5, they're including the active tow kit in it because it's got to make up for it's got to go forward faster somehow. And if they can't get the torque of the motor to help, then they have to rely on other tricks like active tow.
So I just realized we've been on here
1 hour.
for.
Yeah, 1 hour and 38 minutes.
Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Sometimes we do talk in tangents, and yeah,
But it's probably just Lance and Busted Nux.
and still it's a start. And then once we actually narrow it down to just talking about the settings, then you know, like I said, this is first time, right? First time podcast type live chat thing. So
Yep. And then we can have pretty much whoever we want on it. Like if not you, then whoever. If not me, then whoever. Although
yeah,
we need to get you set up.
Hey, I mean, my setup is working, right? Like,
Right, right. But you're the guest technically.
mhm. So, and I don't need everything seems to be coming out correct, yeah, on your end.
I mean, hopefully, right? Like it looks
Yeah.
right.
So,
Anyway, okay. So, I mean, as far as like the actual topic of ESC settings, like most of the ESC settings are going to be like pretty much generic from one ESC to the next. There are a few settings like here and there, like you may see like drive frequency listed as punch instead of drive frequency, and it might be in just like double digits instead of in kilohertz. But it's the same idea. It's just you need to understand or figure out like what means what and how is it going to affect your car in the end.
thanks, Lance. That's true. Lance just commented, I need a good mic. Yes, this laptop. So I guess we'll say our oh, well, not goodbyes, but we'll cut it here and start another one maybe next week or
I mean, we should probably plan on doing this like once a week,
yeah, I'd
probably.
be there. Yeah, it could be a start for our weekly podcast type. Then we can talk about random. Not if it's not drifting, we could just talk about randoms, and then we can add another guest. So then we go from there.
I mean, we definitely went around a lot.
Yeah, it happens though. So I'm satisfied.
Right.
So
I mean, hopefully I can just put in like timestamps in the end, like in the final view for YouTube, like whenever it
yeah.
saves, and then yeah, yeah. Then we'll have our cut down ESC settings video.
hmm Well, I'm sure you can cut it since you recorded, right?
No, I didn't actually record it. It'll be recorded on YouTube. Like it'll be accessible later. You're
Cool.
welcome, Busted Nux. If you do have any
Wait,
questions,
maybe we'll
just
have Busted on here
huh?
and see. Oh, maybe we'll have Busted on here and we'll see his progress on his chassis.
Maybe.